US Sport.
On Off the Ball.
With 888 Casino. 18 plus, see Gamblingcare.ie.
Okay, it is the NFL pod. We're a couple of days late this week. We're coming to you on Wednesday. One, because week 18 doesn't really matter all that much, and there's a few storylines that tend to break early in the week, Black Monday, etc. So we wanted it all to play out. But mainly, the real reason we're late is because we are joined in studio, no less, by one Cian Fahey. Cian, welcome to Dublin.
That's not the real reason.
Big smoke.
That's not the real reason. The real reason is I spent the last 3 days just watching Bryce Young's final week performance over and over again, and now we're going to do 59 minutes on Bryce Young. That's the plan, right?
Bryce Young, good player, it turns out.
Studio, by the way.
Look, I have to say, right, I'm someone that lives and dies by, like, a bet I make at the start of the year that is worth about 30 quid when I win. Do you know what I mean? It's
I thought you were going to say your reputation.
No, but it does, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't in any way, like, it doesn't impact my financial future or in any way. But I am watching the NFL purely because I want to be proved right, or don't want to be proved wrong is probably more. And so I completely understand this Bryce Young thing, because we're having a conversation at the start of the season where you're like, I think he's still good. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's not. Maybe everybody in the NFL is right and I'm wrong. But I think he's good. And you're like, Cian, he's benched. He's the number one pick that's been benched after 19 games. It's never happened before. He's awful. He's a write-off. He comes back in and he's borderline Pro Bowler for the second half of the season.
But then the beauty of the NFL is 3 weeks later, Anthony Richardson got benched, and so far I have not been able to turn around to that one.
Yeah, well, no, I'm just telling
Life
you
is
that
all about balance.
I understand your obsession. Right, we've got playoff games to predict, to look forward to. There's loads to get to, but week 18 does throw up a couple of little things. I had a bit of a rant talking to Nathan on the show last night.
Oh, it made the main show.
I just had a little quick chat about how people who don't follow the NFL in particular, but certainly even American sports at a wider level, will not understand the two major things that came out of week 18. One being the New England Patriots absolutely effing up by winning a game. So you win the last game of your season and you immediately fire the coach. Some would say they were going to do it anyway. Some would say it's because he won the game and cost the Patriots going from a meaningless win, going from the number 1 pick to the number 4 pick. And as I said to Nathan last night, when you're not looking for a quarterback, that's the year you want the number 1 pick in a way, because you are in control of the draft. You get a king's ransom for that number 1. You can create your future based on what you can trade from that pick. So it was a ludicrous thing to do, but there's an interest in that. And then the other thing, which I think you'll have a bit more to say on perhaps, is the high farce at the end of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, where instead of taking a knee, 1 score up in a must-win game to qualify for the playoffs, with time basically expired, and instead of taking a knee, they line up for Baker Mayfield to throw to Mike Evans to get the 5 yards he needs to get a 1,000-yard season for 11 years in a row. Incredible achievement, and to win just the small bonus of $3 million on his contract.
Can we, before we move on to all this, did you give me a shout out, the NFL podcast a shout out while you were on the big stage of the main show? We don't get on the main show, like
we
need
do. We play a clip. No, I did.
A little clinger on here, you know.
I said that it was coming up today. Yeah, I did.
All right, no, the Mike Evans thing. So look, the first thing with the Patriots, like, look, it's a culture thing in American football. The funny thing about this is they probably knew they were firing him. Look, we can debate, was it because of that?
I think they did. No. I think they did. Which in another way makes it as like, why do you put such a big future? Like, there's a lot on the line for the Patriots to lose. Again, the warped nature of American sports. But there was a lot on the line. Winning cost them. You know, you would argue you could throw back to like a number 4 pick and get another first round.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
it
might even cost them a first round pick if you want to look at it that way, right?
The best way of looking at it is it potentially cost them a wide receiver 2 or like a starting tight end,
which is a big deal when you're building a roster from scratch, as the Patriots will have to do outside a quarterback and maybe 1 cornerback, right? So why then do you leave a coach at the wheel that you know you were firing later to make that decision? It's not Jared Mayo's fault that they won the game. He's right to go for it.
It's madness on that level, and that's kind of the micro element of it. But the macro element of it is you moved on from Bill Belichick and brought this guy in as if you had groomed him for a couple of years and you were developing him, and he hadn't come from, like, so for example, if they had hired, just off the top of my head, Raheem Morris, and it was like, Raheem Morris had a disastrous first year. Raheem Morris has been a head coach elsewhere already. So that would be kind of fair enough. You went, all right, we got this wrong. We thought this was going to work. veteran coach, this obviously isn't a fit. But you brought in a guy who you knew was his first time being a head coach, was going to need time to develop. Just like players, young coaches need time to develop. They need experiences. They need to be able to work with players, work with different teams, work with different setups, and be in different circumstances. And you fired him after 1 year based on him not being a fit with the organisation now, and philosophically not being what you want him to be or what you expect him to be. And you're kind of going, okay, then how the hell did you hire him 12 months ago? How is this working in two different ways? Because you had all this time to develop him. You've kind of screwed him now. He's going to get a job somewhere. He'll latch on somewhere. But this kind of hangs over his head as his big opportunity.
Oh, it does, yeah.
And Belichick 12 months ago, I think it was Jeff Jarrington. My apologies if it's the wrong ESPN writer. There's a million of them these days. He had a quote from Belichick last year, 12 months ago, where Belichick was saying, I got forced out because the culture I built here had been eroded away. And that's a critical detail now, because Gerard Mayo, you would assume, Gerard Mayo played for Belichick, was the defensive captain under Belichick, then took over as the coach from Belichick. You would assume he's more in line with Belichick than Kraft in terms of philosophy and stuff. Why can't I say that word? In terms of philosophy and stuff. So what has happened there? So is he in the right, in the wrong? I don't know. I 100% with you on the winning the final game. Yeah. Never should have. But in the larger scale of things, what has happened there? That's a worse sign for the Patriots moving forward.
Yeah, it is. And look, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was a mistake. I think it's a mistake that's probably you're right to draw a line under it. It's not to say that Gerard Mayo doesn't have a future as a coach in the NFL. It's just he's not ready for this job. And, in terms of the organisation, what happened when Alex Ferguson left Manchester United? Who was responsible for the culture of Manchester United? Was it the coach or was it the ownership? And it was the coach leading into the ownership. It wasn't the other way around. He left. They'd won 13 league titles and 2 Champions Leagues, etc., etc. God only knows how many cups and everything else. He leaves. David Moyes comes in, handpicks successor. Slightly different because I think this was very much a Kraft selection. But at the same time, bombs out after 1 year. He goes and rebuilds his career elsewhere and has a good career, but it's never at Manchester United level again, right? That's fine. Likewise, now it's the next step is do they bring in a Mike Vrabel type?
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Mike Vrabel is very, very well thought of coach, has head coaching experience, did a very, very good job with the Titans. But if things are fundamentally wrong there, as you're suggesting, as I think there's a fair to assume way of thinking with what's happened over the last few years, then a new head coach isn't able to do that. A guy who's been there 10 years and has had already success and has all of the structure in the palm of his hand and can manipulate that over the ownership and over the management structure can probably get past it. But no new head coach. It doesn't matter if they brought in, the reincarnation of Bill Parcells now. He's not going to be able to get a real grip on that because the whole fundamental structure is flawed.
Well, you mentioned, I don't want to stay on this for too long because there are playoff games coming up, but you do mention Vrabel there. And if they hire Vrabel, which I think is probably going to happen, it's going to lead to some discussions because the NFL historically is a very, very very, very bad past with black quarterbacks and black head coaches. And black head coaches tend to get one and done more often. And Vrabel is not at the same stage as Mayo, but Vrabel is on that path one step ahead of him. So if you're bringing Vrabel in to replace Mayo, he's a former Patriots captain, former Patriots linebacker, spent no time as a position coach.
So if he goes for
the head coach, now he comes in, replaces Mayo, and it's like, so we just kind of skipped the development period that Mayo should have had, that Vrabel has already had, that you were going to give him initially, and it's just a whole.
I know why that would look that way. I disagree on that, to be honest. I think
I'm not saying this
Vrabel
specific case, but because of the larger conversation that is with the NFL, that's going to be a factor.
Well, Brian Flores is the other choice, and we'll see how the Vikings get on.
That'd be interesting.
That's the issue. If he doesn't get a chance now,
but speaking
then there's
of
a more
coaches who definitely deserve more opportunities, Rex Ryan is interviewing with the Jets.
Yeah, you wanted to talk about this. If Rex Ryan, I heard he might be back as a GM, but then this morning they're saying that he's coming in and interviewing as head coach. They actually interviewed Vrabel, which kind of kicked all this off. I think kind of got the Pats ass in gear in case the Jets get him. The Jets are going to get flirted with and turned down as usual. But Rex Ryan coming back,
Buddy Ryan,
we are back into the second Donald Trump era. So why not have a Rex Ryan return?
I was going to say Buddy Ryan's back as well, but it's actually Rob Ryan is the brother, isn't it? Buddy Ryan's the father.
The dad,
but he's just got fired from the Raiders too. So the Jets could go from Jets could go to Aaron Rodgers, Rex Ryan, and Rob Ryan on their team. On a serious note,
Rex Ryan, by the way, got the Jets to 2 AFC Championship games, and
he's been sat on ESPN's analysis table since then. He has not had a job.
He was the Bills coach after that, wasn't
very
he?
Quickly, if we ignore all he was actually, I forgot about that. If we ignore all the non-football aspects of this, I think the football aspect of this will be very, very interesting because Rex Ryan's whole philosophy is The way this was described to me years ago was Rex Ryan's thought process on defense is I'm going to set a bomb off in the pocket and you can find out a way around it. Now, that used to work back in the day when you had quarterbacks who were like Joe Flacco types where I needed to run the ball to then throw it. Now you've got all these spread offenses where it's like, oh, you're going to blitz me like mad, right? I'm just going to throw a screen and he's going to go for 20 yards.
That's it. He's going to do that in a division that has not only one of the best quarterbacks in Josh Allen, but also a new quarterback in Drake May who is well able to kind of manipulate the pocket and get outside it. And to be honest, Tua, who we can say a lot about, but would thrive against that kind of defense.
Although Tyreek Hill apparently is leaving. He did not hide that. But anyway, we should not be talking about
that, right? The other thing to talk about then is the Mike Evans thing then quickly before we get to the playoffs, because we will go back to the Bucs in a couple of minutes. I have to say, watching it live, I'm like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
This is an insane thing to do, but when it worked, it was a good moment. It was a good sporting moment. I have to say, there's an old romantic in me or something like that, but there was something really cool about seeing a guy with that kind of tenure in the league at one team. Never liked the Bucs. Never been mad into Mike Evans. I've never had a year of him of fantasy or anything. He's always been
that's how you win Mick over.
He's the kind of guy who kills you. He's the kind of guy that kills you in fantasy. He's obviously a great player, but like to be second all time and all of that, like it's an unreal achievement. He's been an unreal player, but for that to manifest in everybody in that stadium, including every single one of his teammates and coaches, being so happy for him, not just getting the record, but to get $3 million, which suggests to me is the kind of bonus that isn't usually there on week 18, which suggests to me that he took some kind of pay cut for cap reasons and put a lot of it in bonus structures, because $3 million is a lot for something as kind of basic as that. So, like, it was a cool moment, but it was far too big a risk. Atlanta were in overtime at the time.
Yeah.
They easily could have won that game. An interception happens, you go 8 points.
You know what's even worse part of that, though? How did the defense not have 10 people on Mike Evans?
I don't know. Because the Saints did not care, I would imagine. It was their last play of the season. They thought they were done.
Yeah.
They thought they were going home.
I mean, they schemed him open too for an easy reception or easy completion, but it was still like the defense was like, you're trying to win this game too. And I know you maybe shouldn't be for the draft pick and all that kind of stuff that we just talked about, but surely the easy thing here is to just put everyone on Evans. Look,
the Saints played a good game, like as in they played an honest game.
And
I think by that stage it was
really
just
matter.
like we were gone. We were on our holidays.
Spencer Rattler, quarterback, you probably weren't going to score anyway. Okay, so there's a bunch of different directions we can go with this. The first one to me is that so he had to get 1,000 yards for the contract bonus, $3 million. From my perspective, I'm like, look, if that was a meaningful situation, your owner makes enough money and Mike Evans has been there long enough that he can just go, right, we'll pay it anyway. Like that has happened before. Where teams have gone, right, it's week 18, we know you want your bonus, but we don't want you to play you because you might get hurt for the playoffs. So, right, we'll honor that bonus. Like,
they're allowed to do that?
They are allowed
cap
to do that.
Cap-wise and everything, yeah?
As far as I know, they are. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I'm 100% have heard stories of that previously. The other part of this is it was for Jerry Rice record to match his 1,000 yards per season or whatever it is.
Yeah, he's still 2 seasons behind Jerry Rice. It was to get into second on his own. He passed out Randy Moss.
But this is the other aspect of this. This is how good Jerry Rice was.
Yeah.
Jerry Rice did all this when there wasn't that extra game.
I think in some seasons there might not even been 60.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was. And then he also got injured as well too. But I was reading up on this. Justin Jefferson right now puts up insane numbers, okay? If Justin Jefferson kept his same average and kept playing at that until he was 36 years of age, so it's another 10, 11 years, whatever it is, he would still be like 5,000 yards or 3,000 or 4,000 yards off of Jerry Rice's record for that time. Like, just to point out how good Jerry Rice was and why so many people argue that Jerry Rice is the greatest quarterback of all, or sorry, not greatest quarterback, the greatest player of all time, even though he's not a quarterback.
When people who were around in the 80s talk about Jerry Rice, they talk about Lawrence Taylor and Jerry Rice as the best football players. It's so hard to imagine in this day and age that those conversations would be happening about a non-quarterback.
Yeah.
But people who lived through it talk about Rice that way, and all the numbers do back it up. Like, he was obviously insane. But from Evans' point of view, I know there's an extra game for a couple of his years. I think that record now that the extra game is going to be there constantly is probably going to be passed out quicker and quicker, but to be honest, it wasn't there for many of those 11, and the fact that he's been so consistent, and the Bucs are such a, he had Tom Brady for 2 years, but other than that, it's not as if he's playing with Joe Montana every year either, you know what I mean? Like, he's been up and down in terms of what that franchise has been, And he's been an incredible player, I think, for them. And he's a great receiver in terms of his ability to win 50-50s and all the kind of things that are good for highlight reels and stuff as well, and for winning football matches. You need a guy, you throw him up there in the end zone, you kind of trust him, you know?
We're in this place now in sports analysis at Wide where durability and longevity is kind of looked down on, because there's been loads of these arguments for kind of above average players who hung around forever, who get put up with the elite of the elite, and that's always kind of been a thing that leaves me thinking some way kind of torn it. But Mike Evans is a really great example of it, and it's really important in the NFL, because if you go back to his draft class, who were the receivers in that draft class? Sammy Watkins, who I absolutely loved. I thought he was going to be a superstar coming out of Clemson. What happened to him? His hamstrings gave up on him. He had knee injuries. He had hip injuries. He had still... he's still the only wide receiver I've ever seen roast Darrell Revis besides Dwayne Bowe. And Dwayne Bowe is obviously not a superstar receiver, so that was kind of just one of these things that randomly happened. And the other one, Odell Beckham. What happened to him? ACL tear, hamstring issues, constantly. Mike Evans' durability, Mike Evans' ability to, like you say, perform with random quarterbacks who were just starting for the Buccaneers for 1 year and then disappeared. I would try and name one, but the last time I tried and named a random quarterback, I combined two of them together, so I don't want to do that again.
Josh Freeman might have been in the early days, was he?
Vincent Jackson,
maybe straight after.
Mike Williams. There might have been some overlap there, but either way, it was that kind of quarterback for most of his career.
Mike Glennon maybe for a year.
Oh, Mike Glennon, that was my guy. I liked him, by the way. I forgot talking about quarterbacks who didn't deserve
played last week, I think.
Did he? He did not.
I think he came in for...
He's about 45 years of age.
No, he came in for... who was it?
Backup quarterbacks, could they all become the same?
The backup played and was taken out because it was too big a risk. It was one of those games that was so meaningless, and Mike Glennon came in. I
can't believe that. That can't be true.
It might have been the Bills-Patriots game, actually.
Mitch Trubisky was the backup there.
Yeah, I think Trubisky might have come out. It was too big a risk to play him. No, I could be wrong. It was one of those games.
But either way, look, the quality of the career he's had. One of the interesting aspects of him, he's so big, he's so large, played with Johnny Manziel in college, was always this big ball winner, always this ability. But when he actually started out, he had a major issue with offensive pass interference, because he had this habit of just pushing defensive backs, and when you're as big as he is, you're obviously not able to hide it. You're not able to, like, if you're pushing someone away, everyone's going to see that. It's not like a subtle movement with the elbow where you're just nudging someone sideways. So he was actually getting into a lot of issues with that, and he corrected it over the first 2 or 3 years of his career. And that's a development thing that you don't often see. Sometimes when receivers have those problems, they can't do the subtle stuff, and they end up just constantly relying on that instead of being able to get open on their own. So he developed as a route runner, he developed his consistency, and the ball winning skills are always there.
Yeah, it wasn't just all given to him.
Yeah,
he learned on the way. Yeah, so fair play to Mike Evans. We should get to some of these games. Look, there's a couple of little things that we should probably get to very, very quickly. Is Mike McCarthy going to be still somehow the Dallas Cowboys coach next year?
How are we in this place? Like
they've refused him.
No. I know how we're in this place. I'm like, the Chicago Bears, what the hell are you doing? Like,
absolutely,
why are you chasing Mike McCarthy? But beyond that, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, it took you more than 24 hours.
You don't even have to fire him.
Yeah.
You could just let him go and speak to the Bears.
It took you more than 24 hours to decide to say no. If you have to think that long about a coach that the Chicago Bears are trying to hire, the chances are that's not a good coach, even though you already know he's not a good coach. But Jerry's listing out the same old thing he's always said. This is a Super Bowl winning coach. All right, he's living off that Super Bowl from 10 years ago. He's lied to you in his interviews. The results he's got in the field have been awful.
He's lied to you in his interviews. Just throw it out there. I know. You've explained it before, but I like not explaining it here.
Okay, fair. None of us have ever lied in an interview, all right, Mick? But that whole thing is just like two franchises fighting over a way to ruin themselves. Like, well, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. And just it fits that same mold of, let's get the old guy that the Bears have done far too often.
And Doug Peterson was unsurprisingly, I'm surprised he made it through to the end of the season. I guess they just couldn't have been bothered, I suppose.
Yeah, but the story here is not really about Doug Peterson. The story here is Shad Khan was on an interview and talked about how he has Trent Baalke still, and he's going to keep Trent Baalke there unless the new head coach says Trent Baalke should grow. And you're kind of going, that's not a great setup and way to be working things. But Trent Baalke has done this quite a few times now, I think, where he's just fired the coach and said, the quarterback's great. And we all know the quarterback's not great at this stage. I think that's one where people can let it go. So the Jaguars are being positioned as this great job. You've got a high-end quarterback. You've got loads of cap room. You've got a bunch of talent. They don't really. I would not really want that job.
Yeah. You wouldn't go, would Ben Johnson not go with a Trevor Lawrence,
Maybe.
who people believe in, and even though I don't know if they should, and a lot of cap room.
I mean, Ben Johnson, I think, will go anywhere and improve it. So it depends, like, are there better options out there?
So Ben Johnson, for people who don't know, is the Lions' offensive coordinator. Yeah. He might use this bye week for some interviews.
They're not allowed anymore, apparently.
Are they not?
Yeah, I saw that the other day. Apparently the rule has changed now. They're trying to delay it.
God, if a team goes to a Super Bowl, though, then that puts
but I think they're
teams in a lot of...
They're trying to delay the whole process, as in...
Don't hire any head coaches for a few weeks.
Maybe this is from next year or something, because there are people doing interviews. Sorry, I think it might be people who are on the team. So like the likes of Mike Vrabel can, because he's already a free agent.
Yeah.
They can't stop him. But I don't think anyone from a current team is allowed to interview. They can be requested and all that kind of stuff until later on.
Okay.
I could be 100% wrong on that, but I read something on Twitter.
Okay, well, I was 100% wrong about
never
Mike
been wrong on
Glennon
this
because
podcast
Mike Glennon hasn't played in the NFL since
I knew
2022. So I don't know who I
surprised he
was
played in
thinking of.
2022.
I'll look it up later. There was someone,
Some tall,
someone who
bald
was
guy
like Mike Glennon, a kind of
can't
a
run.
dodgy white quarterback with no hair.
I mean, that could be
Is Matt
200.
Hasselbeck back?
That could be 200 quarterbacks.
Right, we've got 6 games, unlike the 4 of before, in the wildcard round, and some of them are pretty tasty. We're going to start with the first Saturday game, which is 9:30 our time. There's 3 watchable games in terms of if you don't want to stay up all night. There's 3 what Americans call primetime games that are tough for us. But one of the watchable games, 9:30 Saturday night, is the Chargers at the Texans. We've made our picks for these, and this was one I think we both had a bit of trouble with. I think you might have even flip-flopped.
Accusations being thrown up there.
I've gone for the Texans. It doesn't necessarily mean I even think they're going to win. It's more that I wonder, are they being a little bit overlooked? I think that there's an element of they've been in the playoffs for a long time. They were in a god-awful division. The Indianapolis Colts did everything in their power to get out of their way, and they've basically been anointed since about week 6. It's hard to know what they're really made of because of that. They haven't impressed. At the same time, I still think this Chargers team are young, inexperienced, and very much in a building process. We kind of knew that Harbaugh will come in and get something out of them, get enough out of them. They've had a revelation in J.K. Dobbins as a comeback player of the year candidate at running back.
By the way, they're going to give that to Sam Darnold, apparently. That's a disgrace.
Why?
I don't know. Why is it a disgrace?
Yeah.
Because Sam Darnold's not coming back from anything.
Oh, I suppose. Is he not coming back from being shit?
From being shite, yeah. I don't think that qualifies.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
J.K. Dobbins is there with his Achilles hanging off him. Like, come on.
That's true, yeah, and for a running back especially. But he's been unbelievable, and obviously they've got the quarterback and they've got some pieces. It was interesting when they made all their trades. People were surprised that they kind of kept on a couple of their bigger players on defense, older players, gave them new contracts. It's kind of worked out. They're a solid team, decent draft as well last year. I just wonder if that's their limit for now, and whether I think this will be a close game. I'm literally just going with, I think Stroud might have another playoff win in him. I think that the home advantage might just squeak it out, but I think it's a 50-50 game. Yeah, whoever wins is losing to the Chiefs the week after anyway.
You made that disgraceful accusation of me flip-flopping there, but the reality of this game is you could very much argue for either of these teams. Yeah. It's about, right, who do you think is going to turn up on the day? And I know that's such a cliche, but it's like these teams are very, very similar. Now, the Texans weren't similar at the start of the year. They've had so many injuries that they're kind of down to one wide receiver now, whereas the Chargers came into the year with essentially one wide receiver in Ladd McConkey, who was developed and grown over the course of the season. J.K. Dobbins is great from the backfield, but Joe Mixon is also great from the backfield for the Texans. Offensive lines, both of them are pretty bad. Both of them give away a lot of penalties. Both of them give up a lot of pressure. Defense, very much pass rush heavy. On the defensive side for the Chargers, you've got those veterans we talked about, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, and then on the defensive side for the Texans, you've got Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter. Now, it comes down to player versus player then. Who do you think is going to have the bigger day? Do you think Ladd McConkey is better than Nico Collins? Probably not. Do you think CJ Stroud is better than Justin Herbert? Maybe. That's a kind of a close one. And the difference between CJ Stroud and Justin Herbert is going to have a bigger impact than Ladd McConkey versus Nico Collins.
Yeah.
So it comes down to all this kind of connections in between each other. The really concerning thing, I think, if you're picking the Chargers like I am, is the threat of Will Anderson Jr. and Daniel Hunter, because the Chargers' offensive line is just so poor, and Justin Herbert gets hit so often. It's easier for the Texans' defense to shut down those wide receivers than it is for the Chargers to shut down the Texans' wide receivers. And then on the defensive side for the Chargers, you can kind of see Bosa and Mack not having the impact because the Chargers have a history of not showing up in games. So that's a long way of saying, essentially for me, this comes down to which quarterback are you backing? I'm backing Herbert just because I think he's a little bit more experienced. I think he's played better over recent weeks, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on CJ Stroud. But like I said, I'm saying that right now.
Yeah.
If CJ Stroud comes out and has a 40-point game and throws for 5 touchdowns, I won't be surprised.
And likewise the other way, yeah.
Hopefully, if he does that, Herbert at least loses by having 4 touchdowns and 38 points.
It'd be great if it was a shootout, yeah. And like the defense are lead us to believe
it might be one of those shootouts where not all the points are coming from offense. There might be like 2 defensive touchdowns on either side of the ball kind of a thing.
I have to say, if I literally just had, if there was a safety blanket for either quarterback that I really trusted, that was at high level. Say Mark Andrews was on one of these two teams, it would actually sway my opinion. Dalton Schultz, I thought was going to be that guy last year. He hasn't been this year, and I think the Chargers have a rookie, don't they?
He's smart is his name. I was trying to think of his name there.
He's okay,
really
but again, you're not throwing to him 13 times a game, I suppose. Like, and I wonder if both of these teams need that kind of guy almost more than anything. So
the Chargers need about 3 of them.
It'll actually be intriguing. It's one of those games that generally the early Saturday playoff game isn't the most attractive, and I think by fans and so like this might be the case. But in terms of football, I don't think either are going to the Super Bowl, but in terms of the game itself and how they're matched up, it could be interesting.
You can also just picture like Nico Collins having 200 yards in this game, and you can see like Lad McConkey having 20 catches for 150 yards, kind of a thing. So it's going to be. I think it's going to be a great game. And funnily enough, we're getting very lucky here because that's the early game. The Steelers Ravens, obviously, you always want to watch Lamar as the late game and stuff like that, but the Steelers Ravens is kind of we've seen it twice already.
I'm happy enough.
It's an arm wrestle of a game.
Yeah, I'm happy enough. It's always 18-16. It's
literally every game.
And they all it's a great rivalry. We should put up our picks for that. That's the Steelers Ravens. The second game. It's on late. We've both gone with the Ravens, which I don't think is much surprise really. Obviously, you've the Zay Flower injury there as the question mark. I'm not sure this is the week that matters. I just the Steelers, who we've been big on the pod, and Jer's obviously talked about them a lot. They've had a very, very good season, but it just seems like they've run out of steam 4 or 5 weeks ago, really. Yeah. And we're talking about the Texans doing that. Very different when you've kind of wrapped up a division and you're dealing with injuries. The Steelers, as much as they did secure their playoff spot, had no real reason to slow down. It just seems like that's not there anymore. George Pickens is up there in your talking points as well.
Yeah, 4 drops.
Yeah, 4 drops after coming off of a kind of an injury. He had been in form. He's not there anymore. And whatever it was that was bringing Russell Wilson, whatever, death becomes her style drug that he was taking, it seems to have run out. And he looks like the Russell Wilson of the last 2 years again.
The only thing we really have to say about this game as well, though, is there is pressure on the Ravens because Lamar has that whole rap on him of, he hasn't won the playoffs, and the way they went out last year where they were throwing the ball too much. You've got Derrick Henry there now, so that definitely should not happen. Yeah. You're going against the Steelers defense that can beat the hell out of you if you drop back too often.
Lamar, and your main receiver could be out.
Yes.
Could be weirdly a help.
The thing is, Rashad Bateman's really good and Mark Andrews is really good, but Zay Flowers is the one guy there who's like quick twitch, who can get open in an instant and who can actually threaten you. And now he's been inconsistent catching the ball as well. So it's not like they're losing Justin Jefferson. It's not like they're losing one of the best receivers in the league, but they're losing an important piece. The thing here, though, is Josh Allen is like guaranteed to be MVP at this stage based on the betting odds. So from Lamar's point of view, the only way their whole rivalry and back and forth thing can go back in his favour now is if you win the Super Bowl. Or
win their playoff game, which is likely to be the divisional round next week.
So you can't do that unless you beat the Steelers, and unless you get through the Steelers relatively healthy, I would say as well, because they don't have enough depth there as well in different spots to get by. I don't think.
I agree. I think the big question mark is going to be next week because I just can't see them losing this game. And I think one of the things that will help. You mentioned the Derrick Henry, there to stop them from making those mistakes of before, but also it is almost just the familiarity of the Steelers. You're playing them at home. You do every year since you came into the league. It's always the same game. The Steelers are various levels of good, but they're always the same football team, and they're going to bring the pressure. They're going to lead with a really good defense that hasn't been playing as well over the last month as well. It's not just the offense that struggled. The defense haven't been as dangerous, but they could turn up. That's the talent that could be there on the day. And Lamar kind of knows what to do, I think. And also, he's probably not going to need to get 35 points in this game. He's going to need to get 25 max.
And if you get out in a head lead, if you get out to an early lead, you probably have to get even less because they're not able to play from behind. Yeah. One thing I'll say before we move on from this game: every year this weekend throws up not someone from nowhere, but someone who's like in the background or in the shadows tends to have like a big game. Yeah. My call for that in this weekend, this is across the whole weekend, is Keaton Mitchell, the running back, because he came back from injury mid-season. He's getting more opportunities because Justice Hill was injured, and he's the perfect change-up back. They haven't used him a whole lot in recent weeks as far as I know, and he's this guy who's just an electrifying athlete. He can create big plays from anywhere. Before he got injured last year, he was a key cog for the Ravens. Obviously not as much this year because Derrick Henry is there having 20 plus carries a game, but I think with Zay Flowers being out, that's the kind of guy who's going to get the end rounds. He's going to get the misdirection plays, the guy who can explode into space. By the way, sorry, I said Zay Flowers out. We don't know if he's out yet.
No.
He's just minimum.
Yeah, exactly. He's touch and go, I suppose. Okay, so that's Saturday. 2 good games.
On Saturday. Yeah.
Sunday, 6 o'clock. This is the one everybody's going to watch. This is the one that we all get to see.
Unfortunately.
And oh God, I was so disappointed. And to sell it's the Bills
Let's be
hosting.
positive.
It's the Bills hosting the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos are a very unsexy team, even at the best of times. I would say they weren't expected to be in the playoffs this year. They've done a very, very good job. Rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, second year head coach Sean Payton. They're in all kinds of cap hell, and they're still paying Russell Westbrook.
Might as well be
Russell
at this
Wilson.
stage.
I've said that about 5 times this year. They're paying him about $80 million to play on a different team in the playoffs, and yet here they are in the playoffs, and that's brilliant. I just don't know if this is the game I want to give over the full 3.5 hours to. The only game I'll probably get to watch entirely in full, and it's just like, God, it's kind of boring, isn't it? And I don't see how, if the Bills take it seriously and show up and really have playoff, intentions, that they don't win this game quite easily. Denver are, as Bill Simmons would call it, the good bad team. They're the team that are going to be able to beat all of the other teams at their level all season, and that's enough to get them into the playoffs in a poor AFC.
Shout out to Bill Simmons for that amazing concentration he showed over this week, by the way. If you've seen that picture,
not
you
looking
know
at
what
the
I'm
woman
talking
dancing
about.
beside him.
I was going to avoid bringing the specifics of it up, but so let me try and ease you, or let me try and make this game appeal to you and bring you into it and try and
I'll watch
argue
it. I'll be
first.
okay. I'll be okay if it's close.
We'll know early on. So like you can watch the first quarter, watch the first couple of drives, and you'll know if it's going to be worth watching for the rest of the game, because it comes down to 2 things. One, the Broncos, for all their issues, have a very good defense, okay?
Yeah.
A defense that works on most levels. They've had a couple of injuries now that might factor in and might make it a problem for them. But they are one of the few teams who I think will be able to get consistent pressure on Josh Allen, which is not something he ever has to deal with for the most part. Whenever he has had it, he struggles. And the offense as a whole struggles because they don't have those game-breaking wide receivers anymore to beat the blitzes and to beat the heavy pass rush. But they do have James Cook, who's run very well this year, so that's a counter to that. So defensively, if you see them getting pressure early, even if the Bills score on the opening drive, if they're getting pressure, there's chances for big plays going in the opposite direction. There's chances for them to actually contain the offense. On the other side, if you watched the game last week against the Chiefs backups, obviously, no, doesn't mean a whole lot.
Gave up at 21-0, which was 6 seconds into the game.
Yeah. So basically, the way that offense works is it's a lot of screens, it's a lot of misdirection, it's a lot of running the ball, it's a lot of Bo Nix moving and running around. And now that's a very cold weather friendly offense. He's not going to drop back and have to make difficult throws and try to pick the defense apart. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. I haven't checked the report.
It's Buffalo.
Well, it's Buffalo,
so
yeah.
you don't have to
So you
even
can
check
assume.
yet.
So I actually think that offense could do fairly well, not keeping up with Josh Allen. Like, obviously I've picked the Bills here.
Yeah, we
saw
both picked
that.
the Bills.
So
for
I'm
anyone
not arguing
listening.
that they're going to win the game, but could they at least stay within 10 points at the end or score a touchdown at the end to make it look like they were close when they weren't? That kind of thing. I think that could happen, because I do think there are enough pieces there. Guys like Marvin Mims are making plays. Courtland Sutton's a very good player. Yeah.
And
And like he's a mismatch for anyone, no matter
And
who he
Nix,
plays.
for all the question marks that I think you rightly have still over him, he's a very good rookie season. Like, to even
Deserves
just be in the
massive credit.
playoffs, and it's not as if he's not just game managing. They're using him as a quarterback. Like, he is there and playing the game, and he's done very well.
And
like,
an understated aspect of their season, the pressure on a rookie quarterback starting is always massive. The pressure on him was actually really, really large, because Sean Payton forced Russell Wilson out, and Russell Wilson went to the playoffs as a higher seed with the Steelers. Now imagine if they had missed out in the playoffs. Bo Nix is there. Sean Payton's reputation is in tatters.
Yeah.
So he's actually worked really well with him, and give Sean Payton a lot of credit too. He may be a bit of an asshole, but he's a great coach, and he's a great offensive coach, and he's always going to give you a shot in these games because he'll keep the defense off balance. Bills, incredibly disciplined defense in terms of positioning on the field, in terms of assignment, not necessarily penalties, but a guy like Ed Oliver will be able to disrupt the middle of the pocket too, so that's how they will win on that side of the ball if they're able to. I think I've talked myself into the game anyway. I might not have talked to you or anyone else at home. I've talked myself into it.
Do you know what? I see too much of the Broncos.
Really?
Because
I feel I see very little of them.
because they're on. Because I'm a Red Zone watcher, and
So am I.
they're on the. They're generally playing the West Coast times.
I feel like them and the
so they're
Cardinals
always
I
there.
never
It's
see.
like I see the Raiders. I see the Raiders and the Broncos all the time, and they're always playing each other. It's like. It's just seeing too much of them. But the Broncos are on a different level, obviously. And look, I agree. I feel like it's the biggest matchup we have in the entire 6-game schedule. And just for me, that's a pity, because I do see sometimes the first couple of rounds of the playoffs are very much a selling point for the game over here.
Yeah.
Because people are flicking through and it's like, oh, big game on Sky. And people will watch that 6 o'clock game, and they'll either get into it or they won't. And it's like the Bills and the Broncos aren't exactly the sexiest teams, despite the fact that Bills probably should be, given that they've Josh Allen and so on. But in terms of their historic, I suppose, place or not. And then secondly, it's like it could be a blowout. So that's the issue.
Next game isn't like that though.
The next game absolutely isn't. The next game is, and this is one that people watch. It's on at 9:30 on Sunday evening. It's the Packers and the Eagles. The last time they played,
you and I are going to look stupid.
I can't believe I can see two G's there on the board. We've both gone for Green Bay, massive underdog picks. This is the only like game that I'd say that's 50-50 that we've gone the other way on. That isn't 50-50. The Eagles are number 2 seed. They've won, I don't know how many games did they end up winning? 13 games
it doesn't matter.
this season.
Enough. They were second seed as far as I know.
Yeah. They haven't lost a game while Jalen Hurts was playing since week 3 or 4. He'll be back, I presume. He's still technically in concussion protocol, which is a little bit worrying now because he missed 3 games.
Yeah.
And you kind of thought they'd nothing to play for and they weren't rushing him back. But I saw today he is still in concussion protocol. They don't seem overly worried that he's going to play.
It is weird though with concussion protocol. You can generally sense the vibe with the coverage of it. It feels like everyone's assuming he's going to play.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas when Tua early in the year, it was like everyone knew, or he's gone for a good while.
Yeah. Exactly.
So like I think we can probably safely say he's going to play. The question mark then is how is he going to play?
How well he plays. Now these teams played at the start of the year in Brazil of all places on a cut-up pitch, and Saquon Barkley kind of introduced. It was week 1 and introduced himself as an Eagles player, and everyone was like, "Whoa!" But funnily enough, the Eagles won that game. Jordan Love got injured, went off. That looked like, at the time on that night, it was like this is the end of the Packers season. And I think people thought the Packers were a better team back in week 1.
Yeah.
Now, the season has played on and the Eagles have gone from strength to strength. Basically, after a dodgy first few weeks, they have been brilliant. The Packers have been up and down. But, and I think you're obviously going to agree with me because you've made this pick as well, and I was so surprised to see it because I almost felt like I had to explain it to you while texting you the results. I think that the Packers' highs are as high, if not higher, than the Eagles. We just haven't seen it as consistently.
Yep.
They can hit. They can fly on any given day. All of those receivers can go nuts. The running back is superb. The quarterback has days when he is superb. And their all-round team, their line and their defence can compete. That is a team that can go into Philadelphia and win this game.
Jordan Love to me is the scariest quarterback in the NFC.
Yeah.
And it's that simple. And look, you got a lot of picks right over the years if you just picked the better quarterback in the playoff games. That has generally been an accepted rule. Maybe it's changing, I don't know, but previously that's been the way things have worked. Now, are the Packers better than the Eagles? No. Are there a million football reasons we should pick the Eagles? Yep.
Yeah.
But Josh Jacobs has been brilliant in recent times. Jordan Love, I think, is going to be healthy. I know he had an injury last week, but it seems, again, similar vibe thing of he's going to play.
He was ready to come back in if they needed to chase that game at the end.
So Christian Watson is done with an ACL, so that's a big loss. So vertical there is an issue. But to me, I just feel like that team's going to go on a run. And I'm sitting here now and like it could be made to look a fool because Saquon could have 5 touchdowns for all we know next week. Yeah. But I think the defense there has gotten better over the years, gone on as well. Yeah. Guys like Rashawn Gary have been really good up front. They're actually able to close up running lanes now, where previously they were letting, like Barkley did in week 1, guys find these massive roads to run through. So I think this is one of those picks. And look, this is always the case in any sport. It doesn't always make perfect sense. No. But sometimes you have a vibe and you have a feeling with a team. And to me, Jordan Love is just a pressure guy. He's a guy who, and he couldn't do it last year against the 49ers. They lost to in the end, I think. It was the Lions, maybe. I can't remember who they lost in the end, but his team was overwhelmed. I don't think this Packers team will be overwhelmed by the Eagles. Maybe it will. Maybe the defensive line takes over and dominates the way they've done.
And there is it absolutely could happen because the Eagles have said there's a reason that they've been winning, that they went on such a long winning streak and they're playing very well. And look, Barkley is such an amazing weapon, especially on days when you can get Smith and Brown into it and suddenly there's no real, and Goddard, you know what I mean?
Why are we picking the other team again?
No, that offense has so many weapons because don't forget Hurts is a weapon in himself as well, so they can go so many. It's very hard to just lock up Saquon Barkley because they don't need him. They don't need to use him.
Do we think Hurts is going to be that running guy? Maybe not, and that's a big thing for him.
Yeah. True. It's a very fair question.
Pushes or whatever they're
it's a very fair question. I think because we've both gone for the Packers, I think it would be ridiculous for us not to make the case for the Eagles because they are favourites for a reason. We're both going with it. Basically, you're going with it. I'm almost with my waters. Honestly, the reason for me is that I had a bet at the start of the year on the Packers and their over/under. I thought it was ridiculous. It was 9.5 or something like that. I could not see a path that they couldn't get to 10 wins. Again, one of those ones is not a real money bet as such. It's more just I be right about this and something to follow all year. So I was watching them, and what would happen is they would have these 2 great performances, and then they just wouldn't turn up the third week.
Yeah.
And therefore, nobody really they never gathered enough momentum for people to really pay attention to them.
Yeah.
So they never became a talking point team at all throughout the course of the year. Once Love came back from his injury, people sort of stopped talking about them. They assumed they were going to get into the playoffs, but they weren't really pulling up any trees. They had some really big performances along the way, and they are a well-rounded team. I don't know. I worry that we both picked them.
Thanks. I'll take that as a compliment.
I do worry that we both picked them.
I don't like being in the same boat as you, is what you just said to me there.
No, it's not that. It's not that. It's just that, there's the potential to look like fools here. There's a part of me that's thinking, I feel like there'll be a shock this week, and this is the one I'm going for, as opposed to... I don't want to write off the Eagles. The Eagles could win the Super Bowl. They really could. It's not a massive indictment of them that we've gone for the Packers here.
What we're doing is not the percentage play.
Yes.
We are 100% doing what Josh Windass did last week and just shooting from 70 yards back. It doesn't make any sense to do it. But on Monday we might look really, really smart.
Okay. We better move on here. We've only got a few minutes here for 2 of the biggest games. Sunday night, the late one, the Commanders are at the Buccaneers. It's the second rookie quarterback on the road.
You'll be glad you didn't pick the same as me this time, no?
Well, the rookie quarterback on the road is what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, but have you seen that rookie quarterback?
I totally believe in him. But I also think these are 2 fairly even teams. And the Bucs have a lot of playoff experience. They've just won their 4th NFC South in a row, which surprised me. I know that's a terrible division.
I'm going to say here, was that followed by 4 one-and-dones?
No, I don't think so. I think they won a game last year.
Did they?
Yeah, when Baker won, I think they won the play.
You see, the problem is these days I don't even count the first round as a win.
Yeah, okay. Well, Baker's won. I stand to be corrected, but I think they won a playoff game last year. Bucs aren't an easy out, I would say, and it feels to me like the Commanders, on their day, they're certainly the team of the future. I think they're coming. I think Jaden Daniels has had one of the best rookie seasons we've probably ever seen in the NFL from a quarterback.
Ever for me, yeah.
Yeah, would you actually say ever? Yeah.
For me, in my lifetime,
he is unbelievable. He's got Terry McLaurin there. He's got all the weapons. I feel they've been limping along for a month or two now. They've managed to, they've managed to keep it going. It's not as if it was secure. They still needed some wins along the way. Feel like they've been limping along. Whereas the Bucs, for me, feel like a second round team. I think they're going out in the second round, but I think it'll be close. It's one I want to be wrong on. That's the truth on this one. I think the story of these playoffs could be Jaden Daniels bringing the Commanders deep, and I think everyone would love to see it. I think it would be an amazing story. I just wonder, I'm wary about rookie quarterback on the road in the playoffs, I have to say.
I want you to be wrong on it too.
Yeah.
Actually, I should probably... I said Jordan Love's the most dangerous quarterback in the NFC, and I'd probably still stand by that, just because, like you said, Jaden Daniels is a rookie. But it's got to be close, right? Who wants to play against that guy? He's a freak. The only reason for the Buccaneers to be optimistic on defensive, is they don't necessarily have the greatest wide receivers. You got Luke McCaffrey, Olamide as a case. You're hoping on them to make plays in the playoffs. Those guys might kind of realise, we've been outperforming ourselves a little bit this year. I might go into my shell a little bit here. But you've also got Zach Ertz there, who's played in a lot of playoff games. You've got Terry McLaurin there.
Zach Ertz has been a big asset the last month or so of the season when you need him. Fourth quarter, big catch, first down.
Even when he's making one catch a game.
That's it. Like, he's getting that first down that you need to wrap up a game.
Terry McLaurin hasn't been a playoff player, obviously, because he's been in Washington. That doesn't happen in Washington. But he was at Ohio State, played in big games. He's a superstar level talent, so I don't have any concerns about him performing on the big stage. And then you've got the Brian Robinson in the backfield, who I think is just fantastic. Jaden Daniels, I think, is going to be great. I think they're going to beat the Bucs comfortably, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But if that doesn't happen, the reason it doesn't happen is the Buccaneers' defensive line. The Buccaneers have a lot of size on that defensive line, and it's something that stood out all year.
Your man Diaby looks like a very good player, I have to say.
And Vita Vea is the one in the middle then who's just plugs up everything, which is going to be key, because when you're going against that Washington offense, they start by running the ball up the middle with Ryan Robinson over and over again. They build Jaden Daniels off of that, running outside, running in different directions, and then throwing deep. If your big defensive linemen are stopping that running game without having to commit extra linebackers or committing the safety down, suddenly the passing game is a little bit more condensed. Now, I say that, even when that happens, Jaden Daniels is good enough that he's going to make plays, regardless. So I think the Commanders are actually a better team. I think overall, defensively now, look, they've problems defensively. They're not a good defensive team. The Buccaneers should be able to score. But my question mark comes down is, will Baker Mayfield make enough mistakes that Jaden Daniels is going to make big plays to go above that, if that makes sense? I think so. I think Jaden Daniels is going to announce himself here, and then probably after this...
I hope so.
After this, he'll probably struggle because he'll come up against better teams.
Yeah.
But I think the Bucs aren't on the level of... Like you said, you think they're a second-round team, which isn't crazy at all, obviously. but you think they're a second round team. This isn't like this is a Super Bowl threatening team. If we were coming into this round going, right, they're playing the Lions, I'd probably be like,
yeah,
that's a big ask for a rookie quarterback. I
No,
don't
very
think the Bucs
fair,
are.
very fair. Yeah. And look, I mean, they're a second round team who I'm not going to be surprised if they get knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, no,
again, it's a 50-50-ish call. I just wonder if the momentum of the Commanders, if it's just a bridge too far on the first season of everything there.
That's
really.
normally the way it goes too.
You know,
So you're
and also
playing
like, but
percentages.
CJ Stroud won a playoff game as a rookie last year. It was at home. I do think that makes a bit of a difference as well.
Daniels is such a.
I don't know if Raymond James is the scariest place in the world to go either, though. You know, like at this time of year as well, they're not going to go into a hurricane or anything like that. So, okay, last game Monday night. We've differed on this one too. It's the Vikings at the LA Rams. I've gone for
wait 1 second. Am I right or wrong here? Have you not been like a big Sam Darnold fan throughout this year?
Not a fan. I'm intrigued by the story. And at some point, at about like week 12, week 13, I kind of started making the point that this isn't a fad anymore. That this isn't. He's not going to turn into a pumpkin at 12 o'clock.
And
we're way past 12 o'clock. That's my point, I suppose, on Sam Darnold at this stage, right? So he's obviously doing a very, very good job there. He's a starting quarterback in the NFL. He could be a starting playoff quarterback in the NFL, etc. The Vikings have been written off a lot of times this year, and until they came up against the Lions on Sunday night, they just weren't losing games. They were winning them in silly ways, they were winning them convincingly, all different ways. With Vikings, unbelievable season. I'm not sure it's coming to an end on Monday. The reason I would think it is because I really do trust Sean McVay to figure it out. He's probably my favourite coach in the NFL, and he's been ready for this game for 3 weeks now.
Yeah, and you've also got Matthew Stafford.
It's only been confirmed for a week. They kind of knew last week, and then the week before, the Rams were sort of in a position where they're right. Who's going to be the five?
Yeah.
You know, so the Rams have been looking forward to this for quite a while now. They've had nothing else to worry about, really. The fitness issues are better than they've been at other times. They're a team that probably don't need to be like entirely fully healthy because they never play fully healthy. You know, so Matt Stafford still has it in the locker, and I just feel that they'll get the job done. But I felt that way about the Vikings, I would say 7 times this year, and they've won all 7 of those games.
Although
so that's
last week
they didn't. And in fairness, I don't know whether that was. It was a weird game. What was it? 31-7. It wasn't a 31-7 game. It was. There was a lot of weird factors in it. It was closer than the scoreline suggests.
It's one of those ones where you're playing for something, but you're also already both in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you're not really playing.
The
for something.
scoreline was slightly deceptive. Yeah.
So honestly, this is the one where you could talk me over to your side. I think very easily.
And I think you'll probably do the same when you tell me why the Vikings are.
I don't think I will, because it's so hard to argue that Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford point, because Stafford has won a Super Bowl.
Cameron Collins is a good coach as well, by the way. I definitely rate him.
Sean McVay's coaching tree, so it's apprentice versus master, or whatever way you want to frame that. But Darnold is not on that level with those guys. So that's the concern for me. The concern for me is we get the Sam Darnold that I've always said is coming, and so I look like an absolute idiot if I go pick them now, which I am doing. But
Justin Jefferson, the best football player on the pitch.
This is where I'm going. And the problem for the Rams is, arguably one of the worst starters on the pitch is the guy who's going to be following him around the pitch, in Ahkello Witherspoon.
Right.
And Ahkello Witherspoon, it's not really his fault. It's that the Rams need someone to follow the other guy, and he's not built for that. But the Rams don't have great secondary players. They don't have a Jalen Ramsey anymore. They don't have a Darrell Revis back in the day, a Richard Sherman from back in the day. No one really does anymore. Guys like Sauce Gardner and them, or like AJ Terrell in Atlanta might be the only one right now who's following guys around being successfully. So I don't see how Justin Jefferson doesn't take over this game, not for 4 quarters, but for like a quarter and a half, and that could be 3 touchdowns. Now, similar to the first game we talked about today, this game could be 50 points, both teams threatening that level of scoring, because I do think that's the quality that's there. And ultimately, it's that matchup of Justin Jefferson against Ahkello Witherspoon, and then defensively, I just think the Vikings have that much more to create turnovers against the Rams. But it's one of those uncomfortable ones. You're picking against the guy who's already won a Super Bowl. You're picking against the guy who's an incredibly intelligent head coach, and you're picking against the quarterback who, on his day, can be unstoppable. It doesn't matter what you do. If he turns it on, and if Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are at their normal level, the Rams will win this game. But if that doesn't happen, I think the Vikings do. And honestly, this might be like throughout this season, as we've been watching these teams, we have never argued that these teams are close. But once you get to the playoffs, it's about these matchups.
Yes.
And it's the experience. So now suddenly the Rams and the Vikings look like they're right next to each other here, when is throughout the regular season, it's felt like they've been completely apart. So again, I think this will be a great game. Probably one that not many of us will watch, but the next morning, get on YouTube, like the NFL puts everything up on YouTube.
See your 8-minute highlight package, and you
they do
get
16 now, which is great.
right. Okay. Okay. Look, Sean McVay is the person I trust there. I have to say, in terms of Vikings, one name we haven't mentioned, Adam Jones is one of those underrated running backs.
Yeah.
In modern NFL, I would say he's been doing it consistently for years and years and years and years. Yeah, exactly. So you got Kyron Williams as well. So there's actually some really good running backs on display in the playoffs in general. You could nearly go through every team. We didn't even mention, rookie running back sensation at the Bucs.
His name escapes me. That's probably why we didn't mention him. I was
Bucky Irving, isn't it?
Huh?
Bucky Irving? Am I confusing? I get a bit mixed up between some of the teams sometimes, but yeah, Bucky.
Even at the Bills, like we.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so it's just we talked about the underratedness of that position all year, but if you go through, nearly every team has a franchise running back that have made the playoffs. Kind of incredible.
Resurgence.
Absolutely. Look, it's got to be great. There's 6 games. I'm all in favour of it, even though it means more night games. But at the same time, we get 2 extra playoff teams means 6 games in week 1. We'll be back on Monday.
Thing before we finish up.
Yeah.
So I came out there and I saw this morning.
I'm going to get killed here.
No. Have you heard the news about the Raiders?
Yes.
That Antonio Pierce has been fired. That's the first part of the news. Have you heard the second part of the news?
Brady's going to find the coach.
We're all rooting for that to be Belichick, right? Imagine how amazing that would be. Brady's
I never thought of that.
Head coach.
God, yeah, because he's got the job. I'm more worried that he'll sabotage the Vrabel to the Patriots narrative and go after his old teammates.
But he also might just name himself quarterback after 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
That ship has sailed. People,
it's
almost unfair narrative around Tom Brady at this stage. He's not an insane person.
The problem is
he is an insane person, but he's not delusional.
The problem is we keep listening to him on this commentary and we're like, this is not for you. Go do something else.
I think he's massively improved. That's a conversation for next week. That's a conversation for next week. We've got 6 games to look forward to. We'll be here on Monday. Before, unfortunately, the Rams and Vikings game, but we'll do it with Ger on Monday, and we look forward to round 2, and we'll be back with you then. Shit, I swore I'd be up by half.
Is that my fault?
US Sport
on Off the Ball
with 888 Casino. 18 plus. See Gamblingcare.ie.